She was exhausted, alone, and seconds from falling asleep, until a trembling child's voice on the other end of a wrong number whispered, "Daddy's not breathing." With no name, no address, just a red porch light and hope. Nurse Mira did something most wouldn't, she answered. What happened next? It wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of a story that rewrote 3 lives forever. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Make sure to watch this video till the very end, because in the final moments you'll see the journey from an entirely new perspective. Now let's jump into the story. The city was mostly asleep when Mira stepped off the bus, her breath fogging in the sharp Boston air. Streetlights flickered overhead, and the wind carried the faint smell of rain and distant bakery bread. It was nearly 3 a.m., and her bones felt like they'd turned to cement. 14 hours in the small neighborhood clinic had drained her. Again. She trudged up the steps to her apartment above an old flower shop, unlocked the door, and kicked off her shoes. The heater buzzed weakly from the corner. Mira didn't care. She peeled off her jacket, tossed her nurse's bag to the side, and dropped onto the sofa without even changing out of her scrubs. Just as her eyes began to close, her old phone, an outdated flip-style model she refused to replace, lit up and vibrated against the floorboards. She groaned, rolling over. Who was calling this late? The screen showed an unknown number. Mira almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. But something inside told her to pick up. "Hello?" she mumbled, voice rough. There was a pause, then a tiny whisper. "Is this Aunt Jamie?" Mira sat up. "No, sweetie. I think you have the wrong number." The voice on the other end trembled. "My daddy, he's not waking up. He was holding his chest, and now he's on the floor. I don't know what to do." Mira's sleepiness vanished like smoke. "Wait, can you tell me where you are?" "I don't know." The child sniffled. "We have a red porch light and a big tree in the front. Daddy said if something went wrong to call the number on the fridge, but you're not Aunt Jamie." "I'm not, sweetheart. But I'm a nurse," Mira said gently, already reaching for her bag. "I can help. Stay on the phone with me, okay?" "I'm scared," the little girl whispered. Mira didn't hesitate. She threw on her jacket, grabbed her emergency kit, and headed out the door. "Keep talking to me, sweetheart," she said, locking her apartment. "Can you see a street sign out there? Window?" "No. Just the red light and the tree, and Daddy's not moving." Mira's heart raced. "What's your name?" "Junie," the girl whispered. "My daddy's Theo." "Okay, Junie, I'm coming." She got in her car, fingers shaking slightly as she started the engine. Boston streets were still wet from earlier rain, and every shadow felt too long, too wide. Mira drove slowly, scanning porches for that red light and that one big tree. She almost gave up twice. But then she saw it. Down a side street she'd almost skipped. A small white house with a huge oak tree, a black gate, and a glowing red bulb above the porch. Mira parked and ran up the steps. Before she could knock, the door creaked open. A small girl stood barefoot, holding a worn stuffed bear. Her eyes were wide with fear. "You came," she said softly. "I told you I would," Mira replied, kneeling down to her level. "Where's your daddy?" Junie pointed. "In there." Mira entered the living room. It was dim, with scattered toys and an old piano in the corner. A man lay crumpled on the floor near the couch, one hand clutching his chest, gasping. Mira rushed to his side, placing her kit down and getting to work. "Sir, can you hear me?" she asked, checking his pulse. It was rapid but faint. His lips were pale. Junie hovered in the doorway, her small hands trembling. Mira worked quickly. Oxygen mask, pressure checks, voice steady even as her own heart raced. "You're going to be okay," she told him, unsure if he could hear. After long minutes, his breathing began to slow. His eyes fluttered open. Who are you?" he croaked. "A nurse," Mira said, offering a soft smile. Junie called me by accident, but I came anyway. Theo blinked, his gaze drifting toward the little girl still standing silently with her bear. She called, he murmured, barely believing it. She did everything right, Mira said. She's brave. You should be proud. The living room fell into a quiet hum. Outside, the wind tapped gently at the window panes. Inside, Mira sat on the floor, her kit still open, her eyes on the man who was slowly stabilizing thanks to a wrong number and a child's faith. She looked over at Junie, who now sat quietly on the couch, her eyes not leaving Mira's face. Mira gave her a small nod. Junie whispered, "You're not Aunt Jamie, but I think you're who I needed." Mira swallowed the lump rising in her throat. Some calls aren't meant for anyone, but sometimes someone answers anyway. The living room still smelled faintly of old coffee and lavender floor cleaner. The couch cushions sagged in the middle, and the walls held pictures, some crooked, some missing frames. But in the early morning silence, everything felt still. Mira sat on the edge of the couch, her emergency kit closed but still beside her. Her hands were cold, and exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. But she didn't move to leave. Theo stirred on the rug, lifting one hand slowly to his chest. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, then narrowing as he spotted her. You're not from the hospital," he said, voice cracked and dry. "No," Mira replied, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I'm a nurse. Junie called me. She thought I was someone else." He blinked. "Junie? She told me her daddy was on the floor and couldn't breathe. I didn't know where she was at first, just a red porch light and a tree. That's all she could say. But I found you." Theo's face tightened. Not from pain, but something else. Shame, maybe. Or surprise. He tried to sit up, but Mira placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Don't. Just breathe. You're stable now, but you need rest." He nodded, almost too tired to argue. Just then, tiny footsteps padded down the stairs. Junie appeared at the edge of the room, her stuffed bear tucked under her arm, her curls a soft mess from sleep. "Daddy?" she said softly. Theo turned his head, managing a faint smile. "I'm here, sweetheart." Junie's eyes moved to Mira, and she walked over slowly. "Is he gonna be okay?" Mira crouched to meet her. "He's going to be okay. You helped save him." Junie looked unsure. "I didn't mean to call you. I just pressed the number." Mira nodded. "That number was meant for someone else, maybe, but I think you called exactly who you needed." Junie tilted her head. "Are you a superhero?" Mira chuckled. "No, not quite, just a tired nurse." Theo let out a small laugh, half cough, half disbelief. "Do you want some water?" Mira asked, turning back to him. "There's a pitcher in the kitchen," he said. "Cabinet above the sink." Mira moved through the kitchen with ease, guessing where things were. The cabinets held mismatched mugs, a few children's plates, and a lonely-looking cereal box. She returned with water and helped Theo sit up just enough to drink. Afterward, they sat in silence. Junie leaned into Mira's side without a word. She had never been the kind of nurse to get attached, but tonight felt different. "You really didn't have to come," Theo said quietly. "I know," Mira replied, but I couldn't ignore her voice. He looked down, rubbing a hand over his face. "She hasn't spoken to anyone new in almost a year. Not since her mom." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Mira's chest ached. "I'm sorry," he nodded. "It's been hard for both of us. I've tried. Counselors, teachers, playgroups, but nothing seems to help." Junie's eyes began to droop, her head resting heavier on Mira's side. Mira gently pulled a nearby blanket over the child. "She trusted you," Theo said, "even if by mistake." Mira looked down at the little girl snuggled into her. "Sometimes kids just know who feels safe. It doesn't always need to make sense." Theo smiled faintly. "You say that like it's simple." "Some things are," Mira said softly. An ambulance siren echoed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Theo's expression changed, tense, wary. I didn't call them, he said quickly. But the smart device must have picked up distress noises. It's connected to a monitor I forgot to shut off. Mira nodded. It's okay. Let them come. They can make sure everything's really under control. When the EMTs arrived, Mira stood and gave them a clear, quick report. They checked Theo's vitals, set up a portable oxygen mask, and offered a ride to the hospital. He declined. I'll see my doctor tomorrow, he said firmly. Once they left, the house felt quiet again. Mira moved to the door, grabbing her coat. The sun was starting to rise, a soft pink glow touching the window panes. You should go rest, Theo said. Mira nodded, but before she could open the door, a small tug stopped her. Can you stay? Junie whispered. Just a little longer. Mira looked at Theo, unsure. He shrugged. If you're okay with it. We're not good at asking for help, but it'd be nice, just for a little while. Mira took off her coat and returned to the couch. She pulled the blanket over both her and Junie, who quickly fell asleep again. Theo watched them from his chair, his breathing slow and steady now. His voice, when he spoke again, was barely a whisper. She called you by mistake. But I'm starting to think it wasn't a mistake at all. Mira didn't answer. She simply closed her eyes and stayed. She hadn't meant to, but somehow she did. A stranger who stayed. And that, it turned out, made all the difference. Mira never planned to return the next day. In fact, when she finally got home after sunrise, she told herself she wouldn't. But by the time afternoon rolled around, her thoughts kept drifting back to the little house with the red porch light, back to the small girl who curled into her like they'd always known each other, and back to the man whose tired eyes had watched Mira like she was some unexpected lifeline. That evening, Mira found herself outside the house again. Not out of duty, not exactly. She told herself she was just checking in. Junie opened the door before Mira could knock, still holding her stuffed bear. I saved you a cookie, Junie said proudly. It has a smiley face, but the eye melted. Mira smiled, stepping inside. My favorite kind. Theo stood in the kitchen, clearly surprised to see her. He wore a sweater that looked like it hadn't been washed properly, and there was flour on his elbow. She's been asking about you all day, he said, not quite meeting Mira's eyes. Told her you probably wouldn't come. Well, Mira replied, placing a small paper bag on the table. You're lucky I didn't have better plans. The bag held a new picture book and a small set of colored pencils. Junie's eyes lit up. You didn't have to bring anything, Theo said, his voice quieter now. I know, Mira replied. That's how it started. Not a routine. Not exactly. But Mira came again the next day. And the day after that. Some days, she brought coloring pages, others snacks from the bakery near her apartment. Sometimes she just brought herself. At first, she stayed only an hour or two. She'd sit at the kitchen table, sip weak tea, and read stories while Junie curled beside her. She reminded Theo to take his meds and drink something besides coffee. She never overstepped, never acted like she belonged, but somehow she always seemed to be exactly where she needed to be. One rainy morning, Mira arrived to find a drawing taped to the front door. It was a crayon picture, 3 stick figures holding hands. One had yellow hair. Written above it in big block letters, Don't get lost. Mira blinked hard. That evening, she found a mug of tea waiting for her. A folded note lay beside it, written in Theo's uneven handwriting. Thanks for not getting lost. Mira never asked what that meant. She didn't need to, and yet the more she came, the more something quiet began to stir inside her. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was something like it, something soft and steady. Still, Mira was careful. She kept a distance emotionally. She told herself she was only helping, just filling a gap. But one afternoon after leaving the house, she sat in her car much longer than necessary. Her hands stayed on the steering wheel, unmoving. Her chest felt tight, not from stress, but from something unspoken. something she hadn't let herself feel fully. This isn't your life, she told herself. This isn't your family. That night she didn't sleep well. By morning, she knew she needed space. Not because anything had gone wrong, but because something had started to feel too right. So she emailed her nursing supervisor and asked for a few days off. Personal time. No details. Then she drove to the little white house, an envelope tucked in her jacket pocket. When she arrived, Junie came running. "Are we reading the space book today?" The girl asked, eyes shining. "Not today, sweetheart," Mira said gently. "But soon." She crouched down and hugged Junie tightly, then walked to the kitchen, where Theo was making coffee. "I need a few days," she said, handing him the envelope. "To think, to breathe." Theo looked surprised but didn't argue. He only nodded. "I get it," he said. "It's been a lot." Junie stood near the door, clutching her bear, clearly confused. Mira smiled through the ache. "I'll see. You soon, okay?" Then she left. Back at the hospital, everything felt wrong. The lights too bright. The silence too cold. The routines too repetitive. Mira moved through her shift like a shadow. Efficient, polite, but somewhere else entirely. She didn't say anything to anyone, but she kept checking her phone even though no one had messaged, until the fourth day. During her break, her phone buzzed. Junie's name lit up the screen, along with a message from the kid-safe tablet Mira had set up weeks ago. A drawing appeared. Crayon again, 3 stick figures holding hands. "I miss you," it said in wobbly letters. Seconds later, another message arrived, this time from Theo. "Junie hasn't been sleeping. She thinks you left because of her." Mira didn't reply, not right away. She sat there quietly, phone in her lap, the hospital's noise around her suddenly too loud. That night she recorded a voice message and sent it to Junie's tablet. Her voice was soft, like it always was when telling bedtime stories. "Tonight's tale is about a little fox who got lost in the woods," she said. But even though she couldn't see anyone, she was never really alone. She didn't say her name, didn't mention Theo or the house or anything real, but she knew Junie would understand. Some stories are just for the ones who need them most. And somewhere in that quiet house, Theo listened too. He didn't reply, didn't send anything back. But that didn't matter, because even without being there, Mira hadn't really left, not where it counted. It was just after midnight when Mira's phone rang again. She didn't expect it. She hadn't heard from Theo or Junie in days. She told herself it was for the best, that some space would help her think more clearly. But when her old phone buzzed and she saw Theo's name flash across the screen, her heart dropped. She answered, on the first ring. "Junie's sick," Theo said quickly. His voice was tight, full of worry. "High fever. She's been crying for hours. She keeps asking for you." "I'm coming," Mira said, already grabbing her bag and coat. She didn't stop to ask questions. She didn't hesitate. Within 20 minutes, she was back at the house with the red porch light and the black gate, the one that felt more like home than her own. Theo opened the door before she knocked. He looked tired, his shirt wrinkled and hair a mess. He didn't speak. He just stepped aside and let her in. Junie was on the couch, wrapped in a fleece blanket with stars. Her cheeks were flushed, her curls damp with sweat. Her small body trembled as she whimpered softly. Mira knelt beside her and took her hand. "Hey there, Junebug," she whispered. "I came." Junie's eyes fluttered open. She gave a weak nod. "I knew you would." In the kitchen, Theo was searching drawers with shaking hands. "Where's the acetaminophen?" he muttered, opening and slamming cabinets. "Top cabinet, over the fridge," Mira called out. Theo paused. Then without another word, he found the bottle and brought it to her. Together they worked like a quiet team. Mira cooled Junie's forehead with damp cloths and gave her medicine. Theo sat nearby, wringing his hands but staying close. Time passed, slowly. Junie's fever dropped a little. Her breathing evened out. She drifted into uneasy sleep, clutching her bear. Mira exhaled and leaned back, exhausted but calm. She walked to the kitchen, where Theo sat slumped at the table, holding a mug he hadn't touched. "I didn't come back for you," Mira said, quietly. Theo looked up. "I came because a little girl was scared," she said. "Because I couldn't ignore her voice." Theo nodded. "I know." The silence stretched between them, not heavy, just full of things they hadn't said yet. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table toward her. Mira glanced down. Her eyes widened. It was a reinstatement form for the state medical board. "You?" she asked. "I was a trauma surgeon," Theo said softly. "Before I switched to music teaching and eventually administration, after my wife died, I left everything. I didn't think I could trust myself anymore." Mira didn't speak. She let the silence say what words couldn't. "But you came," he continued. "You didn't know us, you didn't even know where we lived, but you showed up. And I remembered I used to be someone who showed up too." "You don't need me here for that," Mira said gently. "No," Theo agreed. "But I don't think I'd remember who I was, Kara, if you hadn't come." Later that night, Mira sat by Junie's side again. The child's cheeks had cooled and her breathing was deeper now. Mira stroked her hand gently. She looked peaceful. Mira closed her eyes. Maybe she had come for the child. Maybe she had stayed for something else too. Not love. Not yet. But something real. Something growing. When morning came, Mira slipped away quietly before dawn. The streets were still quiet, painted in soft orange light, but her steps this time were calm, not rushed. She wasn't running. She just needed space to think. 1 year later, Mira stood outside a small white classroom built from a converted garage near the neighborhood library. Her hair was tied in a low bun, and a group of children sat in a circle around her. It was her first aid class for kids, her idea, her project, her heart. Each week, children learned how to check pulses, tie bandages, and practice CPR on dolls with cartoon faces. Junie, now 6, was always the first to arrive. That morning, Junie ran up to her proudly. "Coach Mira, I checked Daddy's blood pressure." Again, Mira grinned. "And? He's alive," Junie said seriously. "But he's grumpy." Mira laughed. Theo had started volunteering twice a week. He helped organize supplies and fix leaky pipes. He didn't say much, but he always brought Mira tea and snacks she usually didn't eat but appreciated anyway. They never made grand declarations. There were no flowers, no big questions, just presence, just care, just being there. One evening after class, Mira found a small note tucked into her backpack. The paper was thick, folded carefully. Inside was a crayon drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands. One had yellow hair. At the bottom were the words, "We're not lost anymore." Mira blinked back tears. Later that night, as the sky faded to lavender, Theo joined her in the small backyard. He didn't speak. He simply sat beside her, watching Junie turn cartwheels across the grass. Then he reached into his pocket and handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a silver ring. No jewels, no shine. Just one small engraving inside. "You showed up." Mira didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She closed the box, leaned into Theo, and exhaled. Some love stories begin with roses and candlelight. Others begin with wrong numbers and quiet choices, and the courage to stay.